Well, last week we got down to chapter 2, verse 9. Pastor looked at my notes a minute ago. He said, "Oh, so you're going to get to those this morning?" I said, "I don't know. The new ones, I don't know. We'll see." But chapter 2, verse 9. Therefore, what is therefore?
They're there to let you know to look before.
Yes. The Lord was talking about having loved Israel and taken care of her and protected her and walked over her and watched over her, and the fact that Israel had turned away and seemed to have abandoned him. So therefore, given the fact that Israel had abandoned its first love, so to speak, we turn to verse 9 where it says, "Therefore I will bring charges against you, says the Lord, and against your children's children I will bring charges." It had been generations from the time of the Exodus experience that is referred to earlier in the chapter. Bring charges. There's a little word, R-I-B or R-I-V, riv, and that means charges. And it's a term that was used for courtrooms, for technical charges in a court setting, in a legal setting. So what this verse is saying is that for all of the foregoing reasons and the ones that will come later in the chapter, the Lord is bringing charges against his own people. He's the great judge. He's bringing charges. He's filing charges at the police station against them, so to speak. Because they've done things that are displeasing to him. They've broken the law, again, law, legal. And so the Lord is going to bring charges against him. This is a fairly common expression in the prophets. A number of places the prophets speak about the Lord bringing charges against Israel, for their apostasy, for their turning away from him, for their turning to idols, for their immorality that followed. You realize that any time that you turn from the Lord, immorality follows. When a nation turns from the Lord or an individual turns from the Lord, immorality follows certainly. It may take a little time, but it comes. All right, so the Lord is bringing charges against Israel. And we do need to remember that the charges that the Lord is bringing, the charge of blasphemy, of idolatry, of immorality, these things, especially the idolatry, the blasphemy, these things are capital crimes. You go back to the Old Testament law, and you realize these are capital crimes. These are crimes punishable by death in the Old Testament law, back in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. To blaspheme the Lord is a capital crime. You remember that Jesus was accused of blasphemy in his trials. Why? Because blasphemy was a capital crime. So if they could accuse Jesus of blasphemy successfully, then he would be executed. So here, this is a big deal when the Lord's bringing charges against Israel, and there are going to be charges of idolatry, blasphemy, and so on. And against the children's children, I commented briefly there. It had been generations since the Exodus, since that time when the Lord had this positive view of the 40 years in the wilderness with Israel. And so generations have turned from the Lord, turned away from the Lord. The northern kingdom, Israel, had been destroyed something about 100 years earlier. 721, the northern kingdom fell to the Assyrian army. And then we're in the 600s now, if you remember our time chart that I gave you at the very beginning of this study. So it's about 100 years later, and generations even between those two events have taken place. So the charges just aren't against one generation, they're against multiple generations. For pass beyond the coast of Cyprus. Everybody know where Cyprus is? I should have brought my map in this morning. They're in the Mediterranean, south of Greece and Turkey. It's a big island. It's in the news a lot because it's divided between Muslims and Christians. Greek Christians in the southern part of Cyprus and Muslims in the northern part. So Cyprus is way to the east. It's an island and it's to the east of Israel. So go over to the coasts of Cyprus and see. Send to Kedar, which is an area way to the, excuse me, I got this backwards. Cyprus is to the west of the Holy Land. Kedar is to the east. So really what Jeremiah is saying, go from the east to the west to the east, and see if what I'm going to ask you has occurred. And see if there has been such a thing. What thing? Verse 8. Has a nation changed its gods? Why would he say that? Because Israel has abandoned Yahweh in favor of the Canaanite, Edomite, other gods around them. They've done that. And so this is a strange thing. He's charging them with having changed their gods, which are not gods, the second part of verse 11. But my people have changed their glory, capital G if you're using the New King James, for what does not profit or what is worthless. He's asking them, look as far as you want to, east, west. I think by extension we could say north, south, anywhere. Look, have you ever seen such a thing? This is unheard of, that a nation changes its God, especially to go from the real God to gods that aren't even gods. Has a nation ever done that? Because Israel's in the process of doing it. My people have changed their glory for that which does not profit. Worthless. That's a common word used to describe other gods. They are worthless. You remember what is the consequence of worshiping a worthless God? What's the consequence of that for you, for the person that does it? Over and over, the prophets say, you followed worthless gods, and so you became worthless. Using the same exact word. You follow another God, so you become a worthless God, so you become like what you worship. And that's always been true. You become like what you worship. You followed worthless gods, and we'll see that they have become worthless. Okay? Any question on that little part there? The main charge is having abandoned Yahweh for other gods. That's the thrust of this verse, these two verses. Okay?
Michael, what was the significance of Cyprus and Kedar at that time? Did Cyprus, is that where they got all a lot of it?
No, it's just because Cyprus is far to the east and out into the Mediterranean Sea. It goes beyond the land, farther west than that.
Okay.
It's an island out there. Israel had virtually nothing to do with it. It's just an island. It's a big island south of Turkey. Crete is another big island out there, but they use Cyprus. And Cyprus is to the west, out in the Mediterranean Sea, far to the west. It would be about as far west as they would know about almost. And then Kedar to the east part of Arabia. And so it is just as far as you can go east, as far as you can go west, Have you ever seen such a thing? So it's not that they got any gods from those places. It's just that you can go look, go as far as you want to, and you won't find that this has happened. This is totally unusual. Okay? It's just something that nobody's heard of. All right? Has a nation changed its gods? No. Have the people in Cyprus, have the people in Kedar, have the people in Babylonia, have the people in Syria, have the people in Egypt, have the people in Libya, Cush, anywhere you go? No, you won't see that. That's the idea. As far as you go. All right. So what should be the reaction to this charge? Verse 12. The Lord calls upon his own creation, or Jeremiah does, and speaking the Lord's word. The Lord calls upon his own creation. He says, be astonished. He calls upon the heavens to witness to what he's saying. They're called to witness this utterly astonishing fact. He's charging them with it, and it's a fact. Be astonished, O heavens, at this. I had a Ghanaian pastor one time. Jonah had just gotten to Ghana a few months before, and we were in the far north of Ghana, and we were preparing to go to a city called Bolgatanga, but we were at our hospital for a few months as we began language study. We're looking for a place to live and so on. And one Sunday morning, I went to church. We went to church, and silly us, we got there on time. We were the only people there. Our Sunday school was supposed to start at 9, and then worship at 10. Well, we got there at 9, maybe 5 till. We're the only ones there. So the pastor, they had their little house right near the church there, and he saw us coming, so he hurried up and finished his bath, got dressed, and came over to the church. He rushed over there, and when he got there, this is like 15 minutes later, we're still the only ones there, except for him. So he got there, and you know, in different cultures, humor is different. People take things different. Some things are funny in one culture and not funny at all in another. Well, I didn't know how to joke with Ghanaians at that time yet. I didn't know what was funny to them, what wasn't. And you know that had to be hard for me. If any of you know me at all, right? This joking and cutting up and stuff is just part of my nature. It gets me in trouble once in a while. Got me in trouble that day, sort of. Pastor comes in. We're sitting there waiting for Sunday school to start, and he comes in and apologizes for being late and nobody being there. And I said, well, Pastor, what are you going to do if nobody shows up to worship? I was joking. I knew they were coming. He didn't take it as a joke. He took it as a dead serious question. And he looked me in the face and he said, the stones is a building made of rock, stones. He looked at the walls and he said, I will get up and preach, and these stones will testify to God of my faithfulness. Boom. He meant it. That's what he would have done. So, the Lord calls upon the heavens, that which surrounds the world, to testify to the fact of what God is saying here. Be astonished. No nation has ever changed its gods, but my people are. That's the idea. And be horribly afraid. Be very desolate, says the Lord. You change your gods and you abandon the covenant, guess what's going to happen to you? You need to be astonished. And you need to be not just afraid, but horribly afraid of what's coming when you do that. Desolate, I've told you before, the amount of destruction that took place when the Babylonian army destroyed Judah finally in the late 600s, early part of the 500s. It was horrible. They needed to be afraid because this is no joke. When they turned away from God and turned to other gods, judgment was coming. Now remember, they were in the covenant. They were betrothed to Yahweh. They were his bride. They would have no other gods before them, but they've switched gods. Comment? Question?
Did you hang your head and stay on the sorry? When you told that joke?
Oh, I don't remember what I did. I was so astonished that he said that. Yeah. No, I didn't bow. I don't think I probably did that. I said, oh, I'm sure I said, oh, Pastor, I was just kidding. I know people are going to be here. Yeah. That happened to me a good number of times, actually. Things like that. When I would be asking a question that was sort of a rhetorical question, and somebody would take it serious and answer it. Yeah. But, well, this pastor was a good guy, and so he was serious. He was serious. But Israel needs to be serious too. Verse 13. Verse 13. For my people have committed two evils. Look at that verse and tell me what those two evils are. Don't look at your notes. I've got them there. Two evils. They've forsaken him. Yep. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters. Okay.
Someone dug their cisterns.
Hmm?
Dug their cisterns.
Yeah, they built their own cisterns. They hewed them out of the rock. What does that imply? Broken cisterns that can hold no water.
Well, it was all man-made.
Hmm?
It wasn't God, but man-made.
It was
They were
man-made.
devising their own.
But this is referring to a man-made system of religion. Man-created gods, really. Yes. And those systems were broken. And they built them, you know, in those days, they basically carved cisterns out of solid rock in order for there to be no leaks. But some places where they couldn't do that, they would carve as much of it as they could, build it like they could, and then they used a kind of plaster to plaster it, you know, all around inside so that they would hold water. But they've made systems, they've gone to all this labor of hewing out cisterns, and then they don't hold water. They're useless. The Lord had said that you've turned to that which doesn't profit. You've turned from the glory of God himself to what does not profit. Broken cisterns are pretty worthless.
Like praying to a false prophet.
Mm-hmm. Paul praying to a false God and listening to a false prophet. Yes. So here are two great things that Israel did, and they're really talking about the same thing all at once, but the Lord enumerates them. They have turned from the Lord. And this is not anything that, this continued. If you go to Romans 1, that's the great sin of the nations. They won't give thanks to God. They don't recognize God. Even for all of that he has revealed in the heavens and ultimately through his word, even then the nations don't recognize God and believe in God and trust God. And Israel itself had turned from other gods. The Romans 3:2 and 3 makes that clear. But over and over, Paul says they exchanged. They exchanged the real for that which was not real. They exchanged the most profitable thing of all to the thing that was totally worthless. Go back and read Romans 1, 2, and you'll see what I'm talking about there. But what about they have forsaken me? And we have almost a title for God here, the fountain of living waters. It's certainly a description of God. What do you think that means? You know what living water is as opposed to other water?
Well, it sounds like it gives life.
It does, it gives life.
And it constantly flows. From the source, it constantly
Yes,
flows.
it is not stagnant water. Cisterns contain stagnant water, maybe good water, but it's stagnant water. Living waters are waters that flow. It's a picture of a stream or a creek or a small river flowing through the mountains and tumbling over the rocks, and the beauty of it and the life-giving essence of it. You know, the sheep will be, in Psalm 1, we will be put beside the still waters where we can drink. Jesus uses that picture when he talks to the woman at the well. Get from me the real water, the living water. Well, Israel had the living water, had the real source of life, the real source of meaning, the real source of existence, and turned from it to that which was worthless. And in their turning, they made their own religion. They built their own cisterns, only to find out that those cisterns didn't hold water. What does that mean? They're broken and they won't hold water spiritually. If you worship the Baals, are they going to answer you? Remember that great story of Elijah? Calling down the fire from heaven? The Baal prophets, 400 and some of them, were dancing and cutting themselves and calling on Baal from morning to evening. They were doing all the things they knew to get Baal to answer. And what does he say? Nothing. Nothing. So Elijah gets up, tells them to put water on the wood, soak it down really good just to make sure you don't think there's some trick here. And soak it down, get it good and wet. He calls upon the Lord, boom, fire comes from heaven, consumes the whole thing. Now, who's the real God? That's the issue back then. It's the issue here. It's the issue in the New Testament. Who's the real God? When Paul was in Athens, I think I've told you this before, but there were something on the order of 30,000 idols in that one city. Lots of people would have had their own individual idols outside the door of their home, inside their homes, by their beds, not counting all of the temples that were devoted, big temples, like on the Parthenon, on the great ruins that we see, the temple of Athena there. But there were other gods worshipped in that same place. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. You remember Paul finds one, well, to the unknown God. The Greeks had one to the unknown God, just in case they missed something. 30,000 gods, and maybe they missed something. Now, some of those were overlapped. Some of them would have been to the same God and so on. But lots and lots of gods. Who knows even how to count that? And when you pray to a false God, what do you get? Nothing. How do you think this applies to us?
I don't know, but maybe we try to fill a void with something else other than God.
Yeah, are any of us ever guilty of viewing our own cisterns? What was that, Marge?
I agree with that we do. We tend to forget how much God has done for us. And we fill our time and our space with TV, cars, kids, anything.
Yeah, lots of things.
So,
What are some of those things we talked about that in our own culture we worship?
Well, Marge just mentioned some of them. The television, your family,
Okay.
your job, your hobbies that you like to do more than you want to spend time in God's word.
Uh-huh. How about money, sex, power, our country?
Yes.
Can people make our country into an idol?
Yes.
Just ask the Germans in World War II. Nazism created a cult of the state.
Isn't there a
The
story?
communists are doing the same thing.
Isn't there a story where, people got rid of their idols and they got upset with the Christians because the new believers, because that's gonna affect their economy, it's gonna affect the people that make those idols and sell those idols?
Yes, that's, you may be referring to this in Acts where,
To our economy.
yeah.
Don't we go along, well, we gotta do that because it helps your economy and, you know.
Well, sure, you gotta sell legalized pot in Grand Junction so that we can get the taxes to support the schools.
Right.
Don't remember all the stuff that the police are gonna have to do, or the hospitals are gonna be filled with, or the effect it's gonna have on children's memories and whatever.
And the fact that the money's probably not gonna come
It's
to
not
the
gonna get
schools
there
anyway.
Well,
That would be
the
a
government is really, really good of saying, yes, we use this money for the schools, and they do in fact use it for the schools. But what they also do is take away from the regular budget because they got the money from marijuana.
Yeah.
That's common around the country right now. So you these systems, and then they break and they don't hold water, and you are in a mess. You don't have the living water anymore. So this isn't something that is just ancient. We see it all around us. And what Jeremiah is pleading with us, what the Lord is pleading with us, is that we recognize this and we don't let ourselves fall into this trap. Thinking that, well, I can worship God on Sunday, and the rest of the week I just do what I want to do. And how many of us do that? How many Christians, so-called, do that, where their faith doesn't really matter during the rest of the week? We've all known some of us have acted that way maybe at times. Just at any rate, though this is the charge that the Lord is bringing, and they ought to be horribly afraid. I mean, they're convicted. There really isn't. This is a trial by judge. This isn't a jury trial. The heavens aren't there to say it's true what the Lord has said so much as it is for them to just say, yes, the Lord has judged, the Lord has said this, it's true. And they will testify to the truth of what the Lord has said. Well, any other comment on that? We'll go ahead and start on the next lesson.
I found that I collected dolls for years.
Collective what?
Dolls
Oh,
and patterns. And I was reading in the Bible and I thought, oh my gosh, my doll collection is an idol. I had to get rid of it.
they can turn from a good thing, a fun thing, into an evil thing, can't they?
They can.
When I was still in the Marine Corps, I was in my last year, and I shared this before, I think, but I was struggling with what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I knew I was going to get out of the Marines, and I knew I was going to go back to school, but what school? To do what? I had studied, my degrees were in math and biology. I had a lot of chemistry and physics and a lot of other science. I had a lot of science. And I was debating between going to medical school and going to seminary. Those were the two options. And I struggled with that. I struggled with it. I had a wonderful pastor there. His name was John Robinson, not John Robinson, I the pastor here in Grand Junction, John Robinson. And I went to him one day and I said, Pastor, I said, I am struggling with this and I don't know what to do. I said, I've been praying about this and struggling with this for months and months. I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What am I going to do? And he said to me, he said, well, if you could do anything else besides be a ministry, I'd be happy to go do it. Those were wise words. And I came to the conclusion after more prayer and some more time that I couldn't be happy if I did anything besides go to serve the Lord at seminary, go to school and become whatever I was going to become. Well, the problem was, for me, I loved biology. And I had, when I was in Okinawa, I got a chance to buy a really high quality microscope. Had all the stuff that went with it. And I loved making slides and looking at stuff under the microscope. And loved studying biology, and that was one of the reasons I was thinking of going into medicine. But you know what I had to do? When I told the Lord that I would go to seminary, that I would follow him, I had to get rid of the microscope. I sold it. It was a hindrance to me. Is a microscope evil? No, I wish I had it back now. I could use it, but I'd have fun with it. But it'd just be fun. It wouldn't be something in the way. But at the time, it was in the way. So I sold it. I loved the thing, but I sold it anyway. And I didn't get very much for it either.
But when I drove up, I'd say I was 53, maybe not that old, but I drove up 32 road. And I went in that church and I told them I lost my soul. I had actually lost what I wanted to do. And I still am not sure I've gotten it back. And that's been a long time ago. But I needed some help. And of course, they started me there a little bit. One up here, or I actually went to the one on Elm Street.
Or are you thinking of, so we understand what you're talking about, are you thinking
I mean,
you turn
my
from,
soul went away.
well, it didn't. It didn't.
I hope it didn't.
It didn't. It can't. It's you. You may not feel the presence of whoever you think your soul should feel, but your soul cannot go away. It is you. It is that immaterial part of you that inhabits this body until death, and then one day will be reunited with that body in resurrection. So your soul is not gone, Frank. It may feel like you've abandoned the Lord and you've let it go, but you haven't. You haven't. Well, you don't have to take my word for it. Look at the scriptures. You can't lose your soul. You can lose it in the sense that you turn it over to something besides God.
Yeah.
In that sense, your soul can be devoted to one of these idols, to Chemosh or Asherah or Baal or whatever. or money or power or education or all these other things that we've mentioned that can be idols. I'll bet everybody in this room has struggled with something being idol in their life at some point. You can make another person into an idol. I think that I shared this also once before, but I'm going to share it again anyway. After Joan died, I went through a crisis for a couple of months. I missed her. I was grieving. And all of my thoughts were about her and her being gone and what I'm doing now. And everything was about her. So I began to read the scriptures about resurrection, looking toward that day that our loved ones will be resurrected and our loved ones will be resurrected. And when I was doing that one day, the Lord just spoke to me. He said, "You are making her into an idol. You have made her more important in your life right now than I am." And that was true. It's not, all of you that have experienced the death of a spouse or a close loved one, I think can understand that. It all just so overwhelms you and consumes you. You forget that the Lord is there. And we ask Him for comfort, but we forget sometimes He's there. We so are concentrated with our own things. Some of you have lost children. I think that could consume you as well. We could lose our nation. And so concentrate on that as if that's the end of the world, that a nation might collapse. Israel, Judah, is about to lose their status as a nation. They're going to lose their land. The Babylonian army is going to take it away from them and exile the whole bunch of them almost to Babylon. Well, we don't have to turn away from the Lord, and that's the message of this for us. And we should be horribly afraid if we do. Well, God bless all of you. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. We'll continue with this next. You got the notes for next week, so hold on to it.